Hey all, I'm WebCamParrot, and today we'll be going over the various powers and abilities of Image Comics' Spawn, Al Simmons specifically. Now, Al grew vastly in power over his run, so I'm going to stop at various points in his story to explain exactly how strong and capable he was at that time. This includes Classic Spawn, Post Metamorphosis, Hell King, Divine Spawn, and finally, God Spawn. From tangling with street thugs and androids to straight up godlike power on a multiversal scale, Spawn changed massively over the years, and unlike other comic book characters, he tended to maintain any power increases that he would acquire, something we would see more often in shonen-like protagonists than from comic book heroes. Spawn has been written by numerous impactful authors throughout the years, some of which might surprise you, such as Frank Miller, Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Grant Morrison, and Todd McFarlane. The Spawn comics have been by far the most influential and popular line that Image has ever produced. To truly explain Spawn's actions and motivations, we need to explain his origin. The being that would become Spawn was once the legendarily skilled CIA agent Al Simmons. Simmons is pronounced dead in the very first issue of Spawn, and the news is televised across numerous television stations in the United States in remembrance of the great hero of the American people, Al Simmons. Unbeknownst to the general population, however, Al Simmons' soul was sent to hell, deeds he committed in life as a hired assassin weighing down his soul. What he dreaded most, however, was the absence of his beloved wife, now separated from her forever. This resulted in Al making a foul deal with the terrifying devil known as Malbolgia. He'd be allowed to see his wife again, but would be forced to become one of the manipulative demons Hellspawn. Unsurprisingly to us, the reader, Al had been tricked, however. The literal demon had arranged it so that Al would be able to see his wife again, but without his memories or face, and with a limited time frame to put it right. Thus ends the story of the agent Al Simmons, and begins the story of Spawn. Firstly, I will detail Classic Spawn, starting with speed, power, and his durability, and finally transitioning into his abilities. Spawn's speed in his early issues is nothing extraordinary for the average comic book reader, as most of Classic Spawn's best speed feats come from him reacting to, and if he feels like it, dodging bullets, which can range from something as low as subsonic speeds up to things like 5 times the speed of sound, if not slightly more, depending on how he did it. Spawn also has a single feat of dodging a light blast from Angela whilst being off guard, but I believe this feat to be mostly an outlier, as there isn't really anything on this level like this until way later in his story, and this series implies that Spawn dodging bullets is an impressive feat that he does not always manage to execute at this point. Classic Spawn's physical power isn't anything to scoff at, but his best feats and statements really do come later in the series. One of Classic Spawn's most impressive encounters is with Overtkill, the monstrous cyborg. In this encounter, Spawn is smashed and beaten within only a few pages. He is able to recover from the defeat, however, and utilizes his mercenary background as Al Simmons to locate a military base and weapon storage to get the necessary firepower to take on Overtkill. This weaponry is described as having the capability of leveling entire buildings. From here, the Hellspawn would track down Overtkill and directly engage him. The overwhelming firepower Simmons ends up bringing to the table is enough to blast a large boulder-sized small boulder hole straight through Overtkill's armor and chest, defeating him. This is impressive because Overtkill, in one of his first showings, destroyed a massive military vehicle that goes by the name KP-211 AF4 Special, or the Silver God, which is essentially a tank shown to dwarf an already impressive military tank in size. Its weapon could supposedly destroy 2 city blocks, and even the size of the vehicle itself and the obvious thickness of its armor would require city block levels of energy to crack open, as even something like an N1 Abrams has a fragmentation value of several gigajoules. The Silver God was easily crushed by overt kill in a single leap despite this, and Spawn's gun still easily dispatched him. Spawn's own durability isn't half bad on this scale either, and has been shown to withstand the force of a speeding car travelling at 60 miles per hour, which left the vehicle dismantled and Al Simmons completely unharmed. This is around 44,928 newtons, or 10,000 pounds of force. Spawn is also able to tank blows from overt kill, and was capable of withstanding being stabbed and even having his heart ripped from his chest by the Violator, remaining fine despite the trauma. Furthermore, Spawn can tank a bullet from a weapon that could supposedly turn an M2 Bradley tank into shrapnel with only a single shot, although this could be partly the case because of his regeneration and undead physiology rather than straight up durability. However, where classic Spawn really shines is his massive array of hacks-like abilities and talents. Try and cover as many as possible, starting with Spawn's innate skills. Spawn in his previous life as Al Simmons was a highly recognized Marine and CIA agent given the task of protecting the President. Now, given Al Simmons' reputation and military experience, it is safe to assume he is an extremely well-trained and skillful combatant. We don't have to assume, however, as this is directly displayed when Al Simmons was selected over millions of other souls to be the next Hellspawn. The Hellspawn are beings that are made purely for the purpose of becoming high-ranking officers within Hell's army, only typically coming around once every 100 years or so, and are very carefully picked by Malbolgia as a result. Spawn's abilities are not limited to his physical attributes, however, as Spawn was gifted magic from the Hell King Malbolgia. This magic comes a plethora of hacks, most famously his regeneration. Spawn, as shown here, is completely able to heal a hole in his chest, although he actively needed to spend something known as necroplasm to do it, as opposed to the injury regenerating on its own. Spawn was only given a limited supply of this necroplasm when he was turned into a Hellspawn, and has to use it sparingly in the beginning of his run. This was a limitation given to Simmons by the demon Malbolgia to ensure that Spawn would inevitably become his eternal slave, as once the initial counter of 9,999 units hits 0, Hellspawn's time on Earth ends and they are dragged back to Hell. This risk ends up being worth it, however, as this regeneration can be used in a very interesting way, to teleport Spawn large or small distances in the blink of an eye. He does this by breaking down his body on an atomic level, travelling as a stream of photons and reconstructing himself again at the destination. He can also use this control of the quantum on things outside of his own body, like when he was able to alter the photons present in the air to expose Houdini's invisible car. Spawn was also given a set of psychic abilities, like his mind control, which he used to control an entire group of mercenaries, turning them against each other. Telepathy, and even the manipulation of another's memories, as shown here, where Spawn was able to alter his memories and project them into the minds of others. Simmons can also induce supernatural fear, such as when he was able to terrify Angela, whose entire purpose and training revolves around hunting Hellspawn like Al. This is especially impressive given that she is also known as the most powerful and capable of these Hellspawn hunters. At this time, he also had access to transmutation and various other reality warping capabilities, but classic Spawn had yet to learn how to properly utilize these effects, and he expends even greater amounts of his already limited pool of necroplasm when he attempts them. Lastly, I should mention that classic Spawn does have one very iconic and severe weakness, that being his inability to regenerate from decapitation from a holy weapon. This method is described as the only way to truly end a battle with a Hellspawn. That about does it for classic Spawn. So now we're going to move on to what is often called Post Metamorphosis Spawn. Spawn's suit, the K7 Lether, or K7, is a neural parasite which Spawn is able to borrow energy from. K7 has adaptation properties that allow it to constantly learn and evolve on the fly. Because of this adaptation property, Spawn goes through two major metamorphoses, but for the sake of time and clarity, we will be combining them into one in this video. The only major difference between them is that the first seems to mostly be an increase in his speed and a number of hacks abilities that Spawn can utilize, and the second is a far larger increase to Spawn's raw strength and power, pushing him all the way up to stellar magnitudes. The K7, after its initial upgrade, gives Spawn access to multiple new capabilities, the first one being an ability that summons whatever item, object or person that Spawn wills to be there, virtually giving him access to an unlimited supply of weapons, gadgets and tools. K7 also has a danger sense which is reminiscent of Spider-Man's Spidey senses, as in, the suit is autonomous and passively defends Simmons, and can even attack other beings without him consciously making the decision to do so, allowing Spawn to essentially defend himself even if he's unconscious or not paying attention. K7 is even able to reflect projectiles shot at Spawn back out of his body with equal force. Moving on to his speed, Post-Metamorphic Spawn is able to battle against the Redeemer. A Redeemer is Heaven's answer to the Hellspawn. They are beings infused with heavenly matter to smite the forces of hell, and are naturally gifted with light-based abilities similar to that of Angela's Light Blast, which was shown earlier. During their confrontation, Spawn is able to block a light beam attack from the Redeemer, which would require faster than light reaction and combat speed. Simmons' power, even early into his first metamorphosis, is shown to be significantly more impressive than his previous state, as he is casually able to dismantle and throw massive chunks of rubble at his enemies. Spawn, whilst in this form, is easily able to walk whilst being entirely enveloped in lava, which has a temperature range from 700 to 1200 degrees Celsius, and was even able to withstand an explosion that obliterated an entire castle. This is but a mere fraction of his true strength, however, as Spawn was able to survive attacks from the mighty King of Hell, Malbolgia. Although this Malbolgia was in a weakened state and nowhere near his prime, he was still shown to be strong enough to pierce and kill Heaven's strongest angel, Angela. Angela herself is so durable that she is able to withstand the anti-creation attacks from Kron, which were the same attacks that had single-handedly obliterated multiple solar systems in one blow. Malbolgia would go on to then kill Angela, which sends Spawn into a rage-induced frenzy, in which he beheads Malbolgia and gives out a war cry that shakes all of creation to its very foundations. Simmons' skill also appears to improve after his metamorphosis, as he is able to duel a samurai Hellspawn in blade-to-blade combat successfully, eventually defeating him. Many of Spawn's previous abilities are upgraded as a result of him feeding off of sin and evil, such as his mind hacks, which is now able to do things like distort and corrupt all of the 5 senses. At one point, he would use this ability to force a serial killer to experience all the pain and suffering he had ever caused in a single moment, driving the serial killer to insanity and death in moments. He can stop time on a whim, and on one occasion even did so solely for the purpose of giving him some extra time to think. Spawn also seems to have this strange ability to draw the evil from within his opponents and turn them into actual tangible beings that will attack and attempt to kill them. He has access to a multitude of direct offensive abilities as well, such as a spiritual acid which he can bathe his opponents with, causing their spirit to diminish into nothing. He himself can also bestow and retract powers, which is shown when he removes the teleportation power of 2 demons who previously believed they could travel anywhere in the universe, and then he later returns this power to them. Spawn is even capable of summoning an entire army of Hellspawn to do battle with him in major confrontations. This is of course extremely deadly, as even a young and inexperienced Hellspawn is considered a deadly combatant and one of the strongest members of Hell's forces. Post Metamorphosis Spawn overall has become remarkably tough to vanquish, as his previous weaknesses to beheading and holy weapons no longer apply, only leaving wounds that he can regenerate from like any other. He is able to directly interact with an angelic staff, the same staff that was previously able to erase his being from all existence, and in the situation that he is beheaded, he simply rapidly regrows his head. Speaking of his regenerations, Simmons before his metamorphosis had to consciously expend energy in order to regenerate, but now that is no longer the case, as the power is just a natural phenomenon of his being. Moreover, Spawn is able to make his body and suit become intangible, which permits him to phase through physical objects and interact with other non-corporeal beings such as souls and ghosts. On top of all of this, Al displayed a remarkable resilience of the mind, as he was able to withstand experiencing all of the horrible and atrocious memories of everyone on Earth. In order to explain the next piece of scaling, it is necessary for me to elaborate on the terrifying shadow god known as Urizen, a being older than heaven or hell, older than such petty things as words or memory. Urizen is a being so powerful that it took all the combined forces of heaven and hell to imprison him. Yes, imprison. Even this titanic union of power was only capable of leaving Urizen temporarily sealed, as he cannot be destroyed, only locked away, with heaven and hell alike hoping they never saw the day he would finally escape. Urizen, in his time, was known for his ability to destroy and negate the souls of others by eating their spiritual energy. He himself is so monstrous that merely being in his presence is enough to drive those around him insane. Spawns ends up getting into an encounter with this terrifying beast, and is not only shown to resist this insanity aura, but Urizen also attempts to devour Spawn's soul like he has many times. However, Al is able to resist this effect, coming out completely unscathed. This is probably as a result of Simmons' vast amounts of spiritual energy, as there are an infinite number of souls of the dead present within him. The end of Spawn's battle comes when he seals Urizen once again, utilizing the powers of heaven, hell, and the mortal world, which displays how truly powerful Spawn has become. Yet, even this version of Simmons pales in comparison to Hell King Spawn. Eventually, Spawn would become the king of the 8th realm of Hell after defeating Malbolgia, who himself was previously considered to be the most powerful Hell King to ever exist, and was given the credit of bringing havoc and destruction to billions of dimensions. Al Simmons gained all of Malbolgia's power, and merged with Hell, causing it to become an extension of his being. Hell Kings, in themselves, have complete dominion over their sphere of Hell, and have a vast degree of power and control there, even being described as omnipotent when fighting within them. Obviously, they aren't really all-powerful, as Malbolgia never would have been defeated if they were, but they do have great levels of strength whilst in their own sphere. Hell supposedly has 12 spheres, each with their own designated purpose, but many of them are unknown, even to the likes of Malbolgia. Each of these realms are described as a patch of infinity, and the 8th realm in particular is stated to have a bottomless floor, which would naturally have to be infinite in size. This is consistent, as there are realms in heaven described as holding infinite horizons. This is important because Spawn now has the ability to recreate or destroy the entire 8th realm of Hell, along with the capability to rewrite the reality of infinite universes. Spawn's ethereal essence at this point was so powerful that just leaving Hell obliterated the concept of time entirely. Now, this on its own should be enough to qualify for inaccessible speed, a term that refers to a character that can move whilst no time passes at all. This is technically even faster than being able to move infinite distance in finite time. Now this would be impressive, but random fodder angels are capable of moving themselves and others through nonlinear time, essentially going fast enough to travel through time itself. This is what I would call immeasurable speed, and is something I have covered on the channel before. It's the speed associated with movement through time, or, to put it in other terms, it's moving so fast that you can arrive before you even left. Spawn at this stage should be vastly superior to any angel, particularly the unnamed angel that performed this feat. As a king of hell, Spawn's power increases 100 times over for every beat of his heart, which, when combined with his insane regen and immortality, makes him an incredibly difficult opponent to fight. If you can't kill him right now, eventually he's simply going to surpass you. Next is Divine Spawn. To understand how powerful this version of Spawn is, I must introduce you to two of the most formidable foes Spawn has faced up to this point: God and Satan. These two have been fighting since before time itself and are locked into an eternal stalemate. They were born twins and share the same power, so naturally any feat that God performs would scale to Satan and vice versa. God was able to create all of heaven, including 7 universe-sized realms, the Elysium, which expands and touches all parts of time, and the Throne of Creation, which when utilized by Mammon was capable of recreating the entire universe and causing the destruction of numerous other universal spacetimes. Satan created all 9 known Hell Kings and their infinite-sized realms, and was casually able to beat down Malbolgia, who again is the strongest Hell King. Both of them help forge the cosmology of the Spawnverse. Spawn would take it upon himself to end the stalemate between them and defeat both of them. At the start of Simmons' confrontation with Satan, it is revealed to him by a being known as the Man of Miracles, or sometimes called the Mother of Existence, that there was only one way to stop God and Satan from bringing about Armageddon and the destruction of the mortal world. Spawn would need to travel to the Garden of Eden, defeat the creatures known as the Disciples who guard it, eat the forbidden fruit contained within the garden, and only then would he have the power to face the twins, God and Satan. Simmons follows through with this task and ends up killing all of the disciples, devouring the forbidden fruit, transforming him into Divine Spawn, which in turn grants him freakish power and capabilities that places him on the same level as both God and Satan. He would use these new powers and confront the two directly. However, the stalemate continued, as it was stated that even if God and Satan battled Divine Spawn for all eternity, there would never be a victor. Simmons had come up with a plan. He defeats the armies of heaven and hell and then allows himself to be killed, only to resurrect himself using the power of the Man of Miracles, where he then recreates an entirely new universe, leaving God and Satan trapped in their eternal conflict in the empty remnants of the old universe. It is at this point that Simmons and the Man of Miracle merge their beings into one ultimate life form, and he transforms into the conceptual and physical embodiment of everything that was or ever will be in existence. The Man of Miracles is the creator of both God and Satan, but they are not its only creations. In actuality, the Mother of Existence has created an infinite number of children, each the equals of God or Satan, and each with their own universes and realms. The Man of Miracles is vastly more powerful than any of its children, to the point of being able to casually remove their powers and render them as babies at any time it wished to. It is an omnipresent being that presides over the multiverse, who has the capability to manipulate every concept within it. It is these powers that Spawn used to create his new universe, without God or Satan, preventing any such Armageddon from ever happening in the future. This union with the Man of Miracles would, of course, grant Spawn access to every ability within the verse and complete dominion over its cosmology. This is by far the most impressive feat Spawn has ever displayed, as the cosmology itself is so vast that there are not only an infinite amount of universal spacetimes within it, but also an infinite number of multiversal beings, and now Spawn has transcended them entirely. It is also worth mentioning that in another Top Cow comic, it is stated that there are at least 23 mathematical dimensions beyond the current 3 dimensions, which would mean that merged Spawn has complete manipulation and transcendence over a 26th dimensional space, but it's likely that this statement is non-canon to the Spawn cosmology, as many of the Top Cow and Image Comics properties don't overlap this way. Anyway, that's it for the video. I hope you all enjoyed. A big thanks to Noodles for both his help with the research and editing for this video. A large amount of the research for this video came from him and would not have been possible without it. Look forwards to future videos on more Drew, potentially a video on the cosmology of the Cthulhu mythos. And otherwise, I'll see you all in the next one.